Welcome back to the Revenge Chronicles, the place where real stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and shocking revenge come to life. Now, listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you is something I never imagined could happen in my own family. My family called me the useless daughter. Those were the exact words my father used one night at dinner, right in front of my siblings and my mom. He didn't even flinch when he said it. Just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Some kids are born to make their families proud, and some are just a burden. Tell me, what would you do if the people who were supposed to love you most made you feel like you didn't deserve to exist? Would you stay quiet and keep trying to earn their approval, or would you finally walk away and show them exactly what they lost?" Because that's exactly what I had to decide. And trust me, karma didn't just knock on their door later. It kicked it down. I grew up in a picture-perfect family, or at least that's how it looked from the outside. My parents were what people in our town called high achievers. My dad owned a small but successful law firm, and my mom was one of those PTA moms who always looked immaculate, always hosting charity brunches and pretending we were this flawless, happy family. I was the middle child. My older brother, Daniel, was my dad's pride and joy, the golden boy who could do no wrong. Straight A's, varsity basketball captain, got into college early, you name it. My little sister, Lily, was the baby, always doted on and spoiled. And then there was me, the invisible one. The one who got compared, criticized, and constantly reminded that I was different. See, I wasn't a bad kid. I was quiet, creative. I liked painting, writing, and spending time alone. But my dad hated that. He wanted me to be driven, competitive, loud, like Daniel. Whenever I brought home an art project I was proud of, he'd barely glance at it. "That's nice, Emily," he'd say, without looking up from his phone. "But what are you actually going to do with that? You can't make a living painting trees and sunsets." My mom would nod and say something like, "You should focus on real subjects, honey. Maybe try accounting like your cousin." Every compliment I craved turned into another reminder that I wasn't enough. Things got worse when I turned 16. Daniel had just gotten into Yale on a scholarship, and the entire family treated it like we'd won the lottery. There was a big party, speeches, and my dad even made a toast about raising successful children. He looked right at Daniel and said, "This is what hard work and dedication look like." Then his eyes drifted to me, sitting in the corner, and he added, "And hopefully others will learn from his example." Everyone laughed. I smiled, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside I wanted to disappear. I started believing them, that I really was the useless one. By the time I graduated high school, my confidence was gone. I didn't get into an Ivy League school. In fact, I didn't even apply. I took a year off, hoping to figure myself out, but my parents saw that as failure. Every dinner turned into a lecture. My mom would say, "You're wasting your potential," while my dad would sigh and mutter, "At this point, I don't even know what we did wrong with you." Lily, my younger sister, had started modeling part-time, and my parents bragged about her non-stop. "She's so photogenic, so disciplined," Mom would gush, then glance at me. "Maybe if you cared about your appearance a little more." I eventually moved out. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I got a small apartment downtown, worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a bookstore, one at a coffee shop, and tried to save money to attend community college for graphic design. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. For the first time, I wasn't being compared to anyone. I was just me. But even then, my parents didn't stop. My dad would call occasionally to remind me how disappointed he was that I hadn't gone to a real university. "Daniel's graduating with honors," he'd say. "What do you have to show for yourself?" I'd hang up and cry sometimes, wondering why nothing I did ever counted. Then one day, something changed. I was working a closing shift at the coffee shop when a customer walked in just before we locked the doors. He looked exhausted, like he'd had one of those days where the world just kicked you around. He ordered a coffee, and when I handed it to him, he smiled and said, "You're an artist, aren't you?" I froze. "How do you know that?" I asked, and he pointed to my sketchbook sitting on the counter. I'd been doodling during a break and forgot to close it. He said, "You've got a gift. Don't waste it." That man, whose name I later learned was Jason, turned out to be a creative director at a small marketing agency. He offered to introduce me to someone looking for freelance illustrators. That moment, that random act of kindness, was the start of everything. I began doing small illustration gigs for local businesses, designing logos, social media art, even book covers. My work started getting noticed online, and within a year, I was making more than I had from both of my part-time jobs combined. For the first time in my life, I was proud of myself. I didn't tell my parents right away because, honestly, I didn't think they'd care. But then one night, I got invited to a local art exhibit featuring independent artists. One of my pieces, a painting of a girl standing in the rain, symbolizing resilience, was chosen as the centerpiece. That night, standing there with my name on the wall, I realized I wasn't useless. I'd just been growing in a different direction. A few weeks later, I posted a photo from the exhibit on social media. It went semi-viral, local news picked it up, and suddenly I was getting messages from galleries, even a few offers from design agencies in New York. That's when my family noticed. My mom called me for the first time in months, her tone sugar-sweet. "Emily, honey. We saw your article. That's amazing. Why didn't you tell us?" I almost laughed. The same people who ignored me for years suddenly wanted to be proud. I decided to visit home that weekend, thinking maybe, just maybe, things had changed. They hadn't. When I walked in, my dad gave me that same cold stare he always did. "So," he said, "you're painting full-time now?" I nodded, trying to sound confident. "Yes, it's going really well. I'm thinking of opening my own studio soon." He scoffed. "A studio? You think that's sustainable? Art isn't a career, Emily. It's a hobby. You'll understand when you're older." I was 24. I'd been living independently for years. Yet to him, I was still the disappointment. My mom chimed in, "You should be more practical. Maybe use your art to support Daniel's firm? He could use someone creative for marketing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything I'd built, they still wanted me to serve him. That night after dinner, I packed my things quietly and left. No argument. No goodbye. I just walked out. I decided I was done chasing love that had conditions. Fast forward 2 years. My studio, M & Company Designs, had become one of the most in-demand independent art and branding studios in the city. We had clients from all over the country. I even hired a small team of young artists who, like me, had been told they weren't good enough. It felt poetic, giving others the chance I never got. I bought my own place, traveled to Europe for inspiration, and even held international exhibits. Life was good. Peaceful. Until one day, karma made its entrance in the most unexpected way. It started with a phone call. My mom. Her voice was shaky. "Emily," she said, "we need your help." I felt a pang of old resentment rise in my chest. "What's going on?" I asked, and she started crying. Turns out, Daniel's law firm had been caught up in a massive legal scandal. Fraud, mismanagement, unpaid taxes, the whole thing. My dad's reputation was in ruins. They were losing the house, their savings, everything. "We don't know what to do," she said through tears. "Your father is broken." I stayed silent for a moment. Years ago, those same people wouldn't even acknowledge my art as real work. Now they were coming to me for help. Here's where I want you, the listener, to tell me, what would you do? Would you forgive them, open your arms, and rescue the people who once made you feel worthless? Or would you let karma do what it does best? Because that was the choice in front of me. And I had to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. So pause this video for a second and tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? When I finally spoke, I said, "Mom, I'll think about it." Then I hung up. For the next few days, I couldn't focus. I remembered every insult, every dinner where they made me the punchline, every time I cried myself to sleep wishing they'd just see me. But I also remembered that despite all of it, I had become strong, independent, successful. Because of them, or maybe in spite of them. A week later, I drove back to their house. The same house where my dad once called me useless. It looked smaller now. Dull. My dad sat on the porch, his once proud posture gone. He looked up, surprised to see me. "Emily," he said quietly. "You came." We went inside. Papers were scattered everywhere. Foreclosure notices, unpaid bills, legal documents. My mom was in the kitchen, trying to hold herself together. "We're losing everything," she said, her voice trembling. My dad didn't say a word. For the first time, I saw him not as the man who belittled me, but as a human who had finally been humbled. I took a deep breath and said, "I can help." His eyes widened. "You can?" I nodded. "But not by giving you money. I'll help you rebuild. But on my terms." I offered to create branding and marketing materials for small clients Daniel used to represent, helping them shift to my network instead. Within a few months, my projects helped attract enough business for them to stay afloat, but make no mistake, the power dynamic had changed. They depended on me now. And slowly their tone changed. My mom started visiting my studio, bringing lunch for my team. My dad, who once mocked my art, started showing up at my exhibits, quietly watching from the back. One night, after a show, he came up to me and said, "I was wrong. About everything. You're not useless, Emily. You never were." I don't know if it was satisfaction or sadness I felt then, maybe both. Because hearing those words didn't fix the years of hurt, but it did close a chapter. Karma had done its job. Not by destroying them, but by forcing them to face what they'd done. They learned humility. I learned forgiveness, not for them but for myself. Now, years later, things are different. My dad retired and helps out at local community centers. My mom volunteers for art programs, yes, art for underprivileged kids. Daniel left law altogether and works for a nonprofit now. And me? I still run my studio, still paint, still live freely. Sometimes my dad introduces me to people as my daughter, the artist, and every time I smile, not out of pride but peace. Because I finally know who I am, and no one can take that away from me again. So if you've ever been called useless, worthless, or not enough, remember this: people's opinions don't define your worth. They only reveal their blindness. Karma has a funny way of opening eyes when the time is right. Like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more real-life stories like this, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your family called you useless? Would you forgive or would you walk away? I'll see you all in the next story.